Hello there. Let's see. Hey, Billy Willie. Are you there? See, maybe I have to fix my audio. Try that now. Billy Willie, you gotta unmute your mic. Gotta unmute it. There you go. Are you there? Speak now or forever hold your peace. You guys speak. You guys say a word. You guys say words. You gotta say words. ASMR. Your mic is muted again. Gotta say words. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. You're muted again. Technical difficulties on Billy Willie's end. Billy Willie, are you there? Say if you're there or not. Cause see, you turn on the see if this works. Hello, Billy Willie. Are you there? You're not like saying anything. That's or I'm not hearing anything. I'm not sure why I can't hear you.
It was tabs open.
Oh yeah, too many tabs open.
No, okay, it's the same tab open. So there we are.
Sure.
Yep.
We're gonna talk Scooby Doo. Mm-hmm. Hopefully we'll have a few guests on. I sent the link around. And Fandom Collective just shared the live stream. So, Scooby Doo, Wizard their tale that hasn't been already told. You know what hasn't been told? Someone that actually likes the film, which is me. You know, you see everyone hate this film for some reason. Yeah. What are your thoughts on the film?
I prefer the animated one. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It was supposed to be for a young adult audience, but then they flaked on that idea.
Growing up, it was, you know, it came out around the time that I was.
You were 7 or something.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah.
Oh, you did the maths. You did the maths.
Well, no. I remember being 7 in like 2002.
Yeah. We're supposed to get a guest named Ambassador Kosh on here.
Oh, really?
Who likes the film as well.
Okay.
So that should be good.
Right on.
We can all. So what are your like favorite parts of the movie. I know mine is like Matthew Lillard as Shaggy. I know that Huckleberry doesn't like that guy, but
yeah, that woman from ER is pretty cute. Hawaii.
are you talking about Velma?
Yeah, Velma. The person
Yeah.
who plays Velma. It's pretty kawaii.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking, no, but like overall, the movie's pretty good. I mean, it starts out with that. What is it? A different. It's Shaggy doing the music at the beginning, right?
Really?
Yeah.
What if we just watch the movie?
Watch the movie.
Yeah.
I could get that on my phone, like the movie in 10 minutes.
Are we live streaming the movie somehow?
I can.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that wasn't the intention?
That wasn't an intention. It was more of a review.
Oh.
But if you want to refresh, like do a refresher, you can pop on the movie and we'll live stream with the movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought you were going to live stream the movie. That would have been better.
Really?
Yeah.
And have a commentary that way?
Yeah. I'm not sure if your PC can handle that.
No, I can't. Although I could probably throw it on my phone, but then I wouldn't be able to like talk to all these people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Do you want to do that instead? Like,
if it was possible.
Yeah, if it was possible. We probably accidentally catch the movie on the thing, and I don't want copyright issues.
Right.
So I'll watch it. Yeah. So the movie starts out like, you know, the usual Warner Brothers, and it has like, you know, the spooky music and all that. And it's like classic Scooby Doo almost. Right?
Sure.
And, you know, it opens with the Scooby Doo and ghosty words, and it's Wow O Toy Factory. And there's this ghost. It's floating around. He's capturing Daphne, as always.
Yeah.
You know, Daphne, the damsel in distress, and Velma, you know, always ready with the plan.
To lose her glasses.
And then say, Fred, the jock. Yeah, Fred the jock.
Where are my glasses?
Where are my glasses?
Shaggy.
Yeah.
And then the monster picks them up and gives it to her, and she's like, whoa, 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 whoa.
And then so Scooby is CGI. He's in the barrel, right?
Oh.
And then Shaggy's like, oh, there's no monster behind me. And then Scooby's like, there's a monster behind you. And then Shaggy looks back, there's a monster behind me. You know, the classic old.
Yeah. Just rip on the tropes, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's like spilled gasoline, and then I don't know.
There's Scooby Doo 2 on Netflix, but not
the one that yeah. I'll send you the link to this, by the way. Just so it's easier if you can like live stream. Are you live streaming on your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You won't be able to have this link unless you get. No, you wouldn't be able to throw that on your computer there.
Oh, it's on YouTube itself.
Yeah, just 14 minutes of Scooby Doo. Basically it ends with them breaking up and like the team, and then they gotta go back to this scare island that's like with Mr. Bean.
Oh shit! Really?
Yeah. Oh, Ambassador Kosh is on here. Hello, Kosh.
Evening, gentlemen.
Evening.
Hello. We were just talking Scooby Doo, the live action.
That's the impression I got when you sent me the thing this afternoon. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we were just running through the beginning of the film where before they, they break up as a team.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts on the film?
Honestly, I think the first Scooby Doo movie they did, honestly, both of them were actually very entertaining. Um, I think honestly they picked a good cast and everything for the main core and everything. Obviously, you had the five characters from the original cartoon and everything, and I think they got a good group and everything.
Yeah, I agree.
Honestly, at the time and everything, I had kind of a serious crush on Sarah Michelle Gellar and everything for obvious reasons. I mean,
Yeah,
and
they did kind of sex that movie up a little bit too much.
well, I don't. I think they were trying to contemporize it for the time. I mean, obviously, this was a show. This was a cartoon from the '60s and more from the '70s, more so than anything. I don't think they over sexualize either Velma or Daphne. I think maybe Velma a little bit, but when she got overtaken by the demons or anything, I think that kind of worked in a manner of speaking. But as far as their first case and everything that you see on screen, it kind of fell in line with what they did in the cartoon. And
it was kind of a satire take on it.
It was and everything. And honestly, I think both these movies and everything, Scooby Doo and Scooby Doo Monsters Unleashed, they were both a satire of the cartoon, and they knew it and everything. And they played it. Honestly, I think they played it very well. So
yeah. What are your thoughts on that, Billy? Or Bill?
Joel. Yeah, I would have to agree. It's kind of a mock-up. It's a good idea to, if you're going to bring it into live-action territory, you might as well make fun of the property itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Realism, yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of these movies that are based on cartoons, they try to make it serious, and it always, it comes off as, more cheesy than the cheesy films like Scooby Doo or other live action.
Yeah, honestly, I think if you compare Scooby Doo with, like, say, the Smurfs movies that they did a few years back, they strayed too far away from the source material. Now, they did do another, you probably are both aware, they did another animated Smurfs movie, but it felt much more organic to the 80s cartoon. I think it was called Smurfs, the Hidden Village or the Lost Village or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And that and everything played much better as anything, unlike with the live action ones that they did with, I think at least one of them or both of them were with Neil Patrick Harris. That was more of a Neil Patrick Harris movie with Smurfs in it more than anything. And honestly, I don't particularly care for those. I've never even honestly seen them. I think I've seen maybe the first one, like 20 minutes of it, and I completely checked out. So I think with what they did with Scooby Doo, they handled the source material respectfully as far as it could be respected, because you are talking about a very old, very dated 70s cartoon that's had several reboots throughout the decades. And and honestly, it felt more organic the way they did the first one, especially the first Scooby-Doo movie. The second one, it was okay, but it didn't seem to have that magic that the first one did.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the first one definitely had that cheese factor.
Yeah.
But yeah. So then they end up, re-meeting again because they get this, message to go to Scare Island.
Yeah, Emil Monteverdi is played perfectly by Rowan Atkinson.
Yeah.
Mr. Bean himself, of all people.
Mr. Bean himself, yeah.
So, but yeah, I think them reuniting there in the airport, that scene right there, you could tell they still cared about each other. They were still friends, but there was some bad blood that needed to be cleared up. They all need to pull their heads out of their own butts, to be perfectly candid. I mean, the only two that were all in trying to reunite the team were Shaggy and Scooby. The other three had gone off to do their own things. And I think that's. Go ahead.
Yeah, and you gotta love that little shot they had where the smoke comes out of the van, and it kind of implies that they're stoners, but they're actually just cooking.
No, they're just
hamburgers.
Yeah. Well, I think they were like vegetarian hamburgers because if you remember, I think Shaggy, when he was talking to the one girl on the airplane, Mary Jane, another tongue-in-cheek.
They said the Scooby snacks were
100% vegetarian. Yeah, and honestly, I think that was a great nod right there to that whole theory that the Shaggy and Scooby were stoners and the other guys were as well.
Yeah.
So,
what's Bill's thoughts on that? I
don't know. My headphones are getting all fucked up.
Yeah. So, basically, and then on the plane they have like Scooby and drag basically, and that's a fun gag. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. That everything and the music that they had for an old 70s classic, She's a Brick House, that was just pitch perfect.
Yeah.
So
and then they had what's her name as Mary Jane. That was a fun little gig.
I don't remember the name of the actress who played Mary Jane, to be honest with you. But she seems familiar. Let me hold on just a minute. Let me see if I can't pull her up.
Yeah, Bill, if you want to keep talking, you can. But
no. Oh.
Actually, her name was Ilsa Fisher. So I'm not sure what else she's been.
Not related to Carrie Fisher. I don't know.
No, different spelling entirely. And
yeah.
She's aged fairly well.
Yeah, I love the early 2000s music in it. It's like
yeah. Now I wasn't big into the early 2000s music, to be perfectly honest, but some of it wasn't bad and everything.
Yeah. It was very generic, but
it was, some of it was generic, but then some of it was actually pretty good. I remember, I think they had it was a deleted scene or something, or they played it during the closing credits, where Velma was she was possessed by one of the demons, and she was doing this song and dance number there in the hotel.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it's a deleted scene. Yeah.
Yeah.
The deleted scenes make the movie almost an R-rated movie.
Yeah, just a little bit. I mean,
yeah.
And honestly, I loved. I don't know how far. I don't know if I don't want. I love the twist at the end with the villain.
Yeah,
because I think a lot of people hated that character when they introduced him in the cartoon.
Without spoiling it just yet, but okay,
that's fine.
I one of the actors that was originally going to be in it, I think he plays Pennywise in the original miniseries. I forget his name.
You're talking about the 80s 80s it?
Tim Curry, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, Tim Curry.
He originally was going to be in Scooby Doo, but he quit after that character was introduced in the script because he said he hated that character.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Dang, could you imagine how good that would have been if you had Rowan Atkinson and Tim Curry in that movie?
Yeah.
Oh, good grief. Not to mention Matthew Lillard. Now, I'll say this for Matthew Lillard. He's kind of faded over the years, but the late 90s and early 2000s, he did some decent movies. In particular, he played, obviously most everybody's seen the first Scream.
Yeah,
he played a really good serial killer. And I know this is one that some people are kind of on the fence on. Personally, I like it. I'm kind of
I think pretty much that's one of the things that everyone agrees was the best about those movies were Matthew Lillard as Shaggy.
Yeah,
because he eventually got the voice, the cartoon character.
He got I think I had heard about that. But I think honestly, Matthew Lillard has really good comedic acting chops, but he wasn't able to find his niche or anything in time to really strike for lightning to strike for him. So, but and I honestly like the idea that they made Daphne not so much a damsel in distress. When those years where they were all broken up, she went off and did all this martial arts training. And honestly, I think for Sarah Michelle Gellar, that tied very well within her whole role as Buffy, because she was just coming off of Buffy and everything when she did these 2 Scooby Doo movies, if I remember correctly.
And it did work out, unlike say Ray, but
yeah. I've done a whole. Yeah. Now I haven't addressed Ray directly, but I don't think we want to get into it here and everything. But
it is a Scooby Doo. but so they had the whole tribe of that island, and the costuming is really well done, I think. For cartoon.
And it keeps that cartoonish feel from the old TV show, and even from the newer versions that they've done over the last several years. Now, I've not had a chance to watch all the different reboots of Scooby-Doo that they have done and everything, but I've seen bits and pieces, and they've kept the character design, and they've kept the world building and how everybody's costume fairly consistent, and it works.
Yeah. So they enter this weird haunted house. And, was it Daphne shows up and she's a sexy dude?
Yeah, the guy who's the wannabe voodoo priest.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Don't go up there. That place is uber weird. Do not go near." And she's like, "Well, just because you told me not to go up there, I'm going to go up there anyway."
Exactly.
And
then they cut to like Shaggy and Scooby.
Yeah.
And then Daphne drags them into the.
Yeah. It's the 3 of them in the haunted mansion that's kind of janked up. It's actually the headquarters for the secret society, or whatever you want to call it, that's being run from behind the scenes by not Mr. Emil Montevarius.
Yeah. And then when they get there, like, you have Fred and Velma were supposedly investigating it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Your mic is down, by the way. Your mic is muted, Bill. But continue what you're saying.
Well, I think that whole section in the haunted house, again, this whole movie and everything is almost a callback to all the basic tropes of the old cartoon, just updated and obviously in live action.
Yeah.
And I think honestly, this is very much a satire, but it's a self-aware satire. I mean, your best satires are self-aware. There are some that have been done that aren't quite as self-aware. And I think honestly what they did with Scooby-Doo in this case is they kept to the basic structure of the episodes as they were done throughout the years, but they updated enough that it was relevant for a modern audience, but it still harkened back to what everybody grew up on that watched the show at the time, or those who watched the show in reruns, because even nowadays, the original Scooby-Doo cartoons, even the ones with that one character nobody can honestly stand, still running reruns, and they're still highly watchable. I mean, yeah, they're campy, they're kind of dated, but you know what? They're a good kind of campy, they're a good kind of dated, and it just allows you to have that escape and everything for the episodes are like 30 minutes long with commercials, give or take.
Yeah. So they're in the haunted mansion, and they have the whole tropes and the food, the dinners, and the traps, and
and then you get into the part where they actually come across the brainwashing room.
Yeah.
And I will say this about the brainwashing room. That scene, that whole exchange between Shaggy and Scooby is one of the best. I would say it's the second best fart joke scenes I've seen in the movie. Yeah, honestly, the first one and everything. This might be a movie you may or not be familiar with. Is Blazing Saddles.
Yeah, I've heard of it. It's another satire.
It's from the 1970s. It was done by Mel Brooks. I imagine you know who he is.
Yeah.
Okay. He did Spaceballs. He did Robin Hood Men in Tights. Actually, Blazing Saddles was one of the very first movies that he did, and it's actually a satire of old westerns. And it quite honestly is a movie that they could not or would not let anybody do today because
it's a little bit questionable.
Well, I wouldn't say so much questionable. I just think that the society of today wouldn't be able to handle that type of humor. But for the time and for the people who wrote it, because you actually had good comedic writers and everything, and Mel Brooks himself was a very good comedic writer, writing and directing this piece. And Mel Brooks said very plainly, this movie was a smack in the face of racism. Yeah. Because they were making racism look extremely absurd and very, very foolish. And Blazing Saddles hit that topic head on, but it still retained the humor. It wasn't what they call nowadays woke. Yeah, exactly. And you had a very old school, very much in the vein of David Chappelle, a comedian by the name of Richard Pryor, who helped write the script. And it's just you the first time I ever watched it, my mother actually introduced it to me because we had, this was back when Blockbuster was still in business, Blockbuster Video, and we would go periodically rent movies and everything from there, and we were going through the old classic movie section, and we were looking for something really funny, and she's like, well, you've never seen this. And I'm like, well, what is it? She's like, it's Blazing Saddles. I was like, okay, let's give it a shot.
Yeah.
I did not stop laughing about the whole runtime.
Yeah.
And everything. But sorry, I don't mean to take us down.
Yeah. Back to Scooby Doo. So they almost get caught in the thing, and then there's another fart joke, and it kind of cuts them leaving. Another trope was them hiding in the suits of armor. So yeah. And then they meet Mr. Bean again. So and then there's a little flashback towards the tribe.
Yeah. And
then
honestly,
metal pyramid type thing, they kind of unlock something.
Oh yeah, the I can't think of the name of the what the heck is the name of that thing?
Yeah.
The little magical pyramid that has all the glyphs and stuff about the demons that used to inhabit the island.
Yeah. And then while Velma is talking to that guy, they do a little flashback, and here's so Scrappy Doo is shown.
Yeah, the part where they finally get fed up with him and they kick him to the side of the road and leave him in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly. And
you're like, yes, finally they did what they did in the movie, what people wanted them to do in the show, and it's because I could, even as a kid, I found Scrappy Doo cringeworthy because he just did not fit in the show. And I think the fact that you have that scene is kind of the people who
Fenrir Fire makes a good point. Freddie Prinze Jr. kind of
turned him off from it now.
Yeah.
And believe me, I can understand Fenrir. I can understand what you're saying, because that whole rant that he went on, excuse me, Mr. Freddie Prinze, your shelf life in Hollywood is well past its date. Be quiet. Be happy you got to do a decent Star Wars cartoon before Disney took everything down the crapper. Yeah. You don't know the Force. You played a Jedi on the TV show. Get over yourself, for heaven's sake.
Exactly. He basically became Fred from Scooby Doo.
Yeah, and he did it. Honestly, he did a good job as Fred and everything because he wasn't. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think he did a good job because he was a jerk in real life.
Yeah, but here's the thing with the Fred version, the cartoon version of Fred, and the movie version of Fred. Yeah, the cartoon version was a bit self-absorbed and kind of pompous, but he was still mostly likable. The movie version went a little overboard with how they portrayed Fred, but still at the same time, he was not unlikable. But with Freddie Prinze doing his whole making a fool of himself, he's pretty much soured his reputation with the public, and nobody's going to want to necessarily touch him. Now, Friender, if you're still watching, I will say this. I do understand what you're saying, but give Scooby Doo a chance if you've not watched it, at least the first one.
Yeah.
And honestly, the second one's not bad. Yeah, it's not as good. It's not as good as the first one, but at the same time, it's a good one. Just shut off your brain and just enjoy.
Yeah, I think the second one tried to be a lot like the cartoon in a way, and less satire. Mm-hmm. It was more of a,
because there's a way that they did Scooby Doo in that first movie. It was very much satire. It was very much played for laughs and everything, but at the same time, it was trying to be its own thing, and it did that relatively well. So,
yeah. So then there's the scene with Scooby comes in and all, spazzed out and all that.
Yeah, he's trying to because he gets lured into the jungle and everything by one of the demons trying to kidnap him for the big bad, and he's like, Reuben tried to remap me.
Yeah, and then Fred's like, there are no such thing as ghosts, spirits, and goblins.
And then
poof, they show up. Yeah, poof.
The demons come popping out of the woodwork, kidnapping everybody, and all heck just absolutely breaks loose.
Yeah, and then they capture all the Mystery Inc. crew.
Yeah. They capture everybody. They fool Scooby Doo into thinking that he's going to be some sort of sacrifice, but it's not necessarily a dangerous sacrifice. He's just going to be a happy sacrifice.
Yeah,
because he's telling Shaggy, "I'm a rush."
Yeah,
and Shaggy's trying to tell him, Scoob, that's not good. That's bad. This is a bad thing. The demons are are fooling you here.
Yeah, they end up possessing a lot of the Mr. Inc. And that's another funny gag they basically do.
Oh yeah, the whole scene where they go back down into the cavern and they find the cauldron with all the souls, and the souls are just heads. And you've got that whole section there where they're switching bodies backwards and forwards. And Fred turns into a little bit of a perv when he gets into Daphne's body, and he's like, that's just yeah. But they finally get their right soul back in the right body.
Exactly.
So
and
mm-hmm.
Yeah, but so they finally team up to try to take down this whole thing, and they go into the cave, and that's pretty much the souls.
They there's actually a callback to an earlier scene where Shaggy and Mary Jane are at one of the bars there on the island, and he's playing a claw game, and he actually gets her a little voodoo head, and he actually uses a bigger claw later on at the end of the movie, and is able to use his mad mechanical claw abilities to basically save the day, which honestly is a rarity for him, especially if you consider the fact that more often than not in the cartoon, Shaggy and Scooby did not ever save the day. More often than not, they were a hindrance to everybody getting out alive or figuring out who the bad guy is.
Yeah, and then the plot twist comes in. Apparently, Mr. Bean is Scrappy Doo.
Scrappy Doo.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that they gave him the most overbearing sounding name that you can think of. Scrappy Cornelius Doo. Cornelius.
Yeah.
That is just
named after
that is
the Planet Apes.
It's just absolutely cringeworthy the name they give to Scrappy Doo.
Yeah.
And they cut him off just as he's getting into the chopper because he's about to call them all a bunch of SOBs essentially.
Yeah.
It's almost kind of like the end credits scene or the post credits scene in Avengers Infinity War where you see Samuel Jackson and Maria Hill and they're getting dusted and Samuel Jackson does his classic mother ever.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah, and then Scrappy Doo becomes this massive.
Oh yeah.
Guy
Monstrous, absolutely hideous looking puppy.
Yeah. And then they cut to Daphne doing her martial arts thing.
Yeah. Yeah. She's fighting the professional wrestler that's supposed to be one of the henchmen for Scrappy, along with the really creepy priest guy, not the other one or anything, the wannabe priest guy. This is a pseudo legit voodoo priest.
Yeah.
And she's fighting the luchador. He's like he's like a very muscular luchador and everything, because most of your Mexican luchadors aren't that muscular. They're more known for their high flying ability and whatnot. So,
and then Mary Jane, she turns out to be possessed as well.
Yeah, and they get all the demon souls out of everybody's bodies, and they use that skull mirror ball to evaporate the demons, because they figure out that sunlight is the only thing that can kill these things, much like a lot of your other supernatural creatures like your vampires and so on. So,
and of course, then they use the staff to kind of shrink down Scrappy Doo again, and then.
Well, actually, what they ended up doing, I think, is they Shaggy uses that oversized claw to pull that triangular device out of his chest, and everything is what actually happens. And it sucks and in the process, it sucks all the souls out of Scrappy's body, and he shrinks back down to his normal size. And they shove him in some sort of cage or whatever, and he gets shipped off with the rest of his henchmen to prison.
And then there's the other plot twist where Mr. Bean has been hiding in the thing.
Yeah, he had been captured by Scrappy and his goons and everything, and shoved in some sort of jail. And he's got this long, crazy beard, and his hair's all wigged out and everything. He's kind of grimy and dirty and everything. But they say Mr. Bean. Thank goodness.
You gotta love that actor. He always puts his best.
I honestly have not seen any of the Mr. Bean movies. I haven't seen. He did like a spoof of a James Bond movie. It was called Johnny English or something.
Yeah.
That he did and everything. I never seen it, but I've heard him passing good things about it. So I might watch it somewhere along the way. Yeah. So
then Scrappy gets locked up and all that, and then Fred gives props to Velma for coming up with the plan. Yeah.
And honestly, I think that was a good character moment for him, because before that point, he always took the credit for coming up with the plan, when in fact it was Velma Velma was the brains of the operation. Let's just be candid here. If you ever watched the Robot Chicken episode where Velma actually gets hurt, and they have to bring in the girl from the girl with the dragon tattoo to replace her. Without the brains of the operation, they're more or less sunk. Because let's be candid here. Fred's the pretty boy, Daphne's the damsel in distress, and Scrappy and Shaggy are the comic relief. Velma's the brains of the operation, honestly.
Yeah. So it ends, and they have this weird during the credits, not a post credit, but during the credits where Shaggy and Scooby are eating a bunch of peppers.
Ghost peppers.
Yeah, ghost peppers.
And Which actually, in real life, if you've ever had a ghost pepper, they are that bleeding hot.
Yeah.
They will burn your face off.
Exactly.
But yeah, that's a good little moment right there between Shane and Scooby.
They keep pouring ketchup into their mouths, and
and you don't use ketchup for spicy food. You drink milk, lots of milk.
Lots of milk.
But anyway,
yeah. So that's the end of the first one. I don't know if you want to kind of do a rundown on the second one.
We can, sure. I've got time.
You can start off with that while I look up kind of the rundown.
Okay. Well, it's been a few years since I've seen the second one. I know that they bring in a couple other cameo actors for this one. The opening of it actually starts off with the opening of this Mystery Inc. museum or something along those lines that chronicles the whole history of the team. And they are having a grand opening of the museum, and you have a reporter there played actually by Alicia Silverstone, which I think was her first role that she had done, her first movie role she had done post Batman and Robin, because it took her that long for her to find any type of role or anybody that would actually touch her, because Batman and Robin, you don't have to say all you can just say the title, and most people go, ugh.
Yeah.
Shoot! I'd rather be shot in the head and everything rather than watch Batman and Robin again.
Yeah, that's another one that's kind of a cheeseball movie that, you know.
Yeah, but you have Velma doing this walkthrough with, I think it's a group of reporters or whatever, going through all the different artifacts from all the years that Mystery Inc. has been in operation. You've got all the costumes from the past villains that they have unmasked and sent off to jail. You've got the there's like two that I recall and everything. One is the oh, for heaven's sake,
yeah.
I think one was the minor 49er, and another one was the guy that wore the deep diving suit. The old-fashioned deep diving suit and everything that they had on display there as well. And then you have this, all of a sudden you have this big crash in through, I think it's like a skylight or something. And it's this, it's supposed to be this ghost or anything, or this phantom. He's all silvery.
He's like a big dinosaur,
no, it wasn't a dinosaur. That comes later.
Yeah.
That comes, I think that comes later in the movie, or it's towards it's actually, what ends up happening is this other character, which is basically the main antagonist of the second movie, comes in and reanimates all the costumes and starts wreaking all sorts of havoc. Yeah. And I think this takes place in Coolsville and everything. Is you only hear the town reference once or twice. And there was a cartoon that they did in the 80s that I really liked. It was a Scooby Doo cartoon. It was called A Pup Named Scooby Doo or anything, but it wasn't Scrappy Doo. It was Scooby Doo as a puppy. Yeah. But I think the Mystery Inc. and everything museum is in Coolsville, and you have this villain come in and reanimate all the old villains that they had captured. Somehow he's able to reimbue them with their personality or whatever, and they start just wreaking havoc all over the place. And the people of the town and everything, and the reporters start blaming Mystery Inc. for this happening and everything, because they didn't, I guess, take enough precautions or whatever the case is, and now they're kind of on the Mystery Inc. is kind of on the defensive, and they're like, guys, we've got to make this right. We got to fix this. This is kind of our responsibility, even though we didn't foresee this happening. Yeah. And you've got this.
They have a cameo from Seth Green as well. So.
Yeah, I do remember that because, well, Seth Green is one of the guys that's behind Robot Chicken. Yeah. And they've done a lot of Scooby Doo shorts and everything with Scooby Doo. So.
And they introduced them in the museum scene, and Velma catches. There's almost like a love. Yeah, there's almost like a love.
Kind of like a love story. Yeah, because I remember later on he shows back up at their. I think they all live in I think they share a house or something like that, and she kind of gets herself all dolled up and everything for him because she's trying to catch his eye, and it honestly it works and everything. To be honest and everything, because he's like, it's almost like the kind of like along the same storyline of Seth Green when he was in Buffy, the first, especially in the first, in the first and second,
or that other James Bond parody thing.
Oh, Austin Powers. Yeah, he was in Austin Powers. He played Scott Evil, or Scotty Evil, as his dad called him.
Yeah,
but yeah, I thought honestly. And here's the funny thing about the girl who plays Velma, Linda Cadridelli or something like that. She actually plays Clint Barton's wife in the Avengers movies.
Oh yeah.
So
so they end up going to another haunted house and falling through a trapdoor.
Trapdoors. Why is it always a trap?
There's always a trapdoor with these.
There's always a trapdoor.
Yeah. And of course, Daphne finds a way to unlock it with her purse.
Okay, that's a new one even on me.
Yeah. So they almost split up to find clues, as
they're known to do.
Yeah, as they're known to do in the cartoons. And then there's like this possessed knight of armor that shows up.
Yeah. I think there was one Scooby Doo cartoon where a possessed suit of armor. Well, it was supposed to be a possessed suit of armor. Played very predominantly and everything, because you actually see in the opening credit of the old cartoon, there's a suit of armor that's kind of reaching out to grab them or grab you.
So yeah, after all that, they cut to a scene where Seth Green shows up again, and Velma tries to hide herself from him, and then comes back in her outfit.
In her old outfit and everything, where she's not quite as sexy. So
yeah,
but I'm honestly, it's been, like I said, it's been a while since I've seen the second one and everything, so I'm kind of drawing a blank. So I'm leaning on you here for this part.
Exactly. I mean, they the first one's a little bit more memorable.
Yeah. But now I know we're jumping ahead a little bit, but if I remember correctly, Alicia Silverstone, she plays a reporter, but it actually turns out that she's the one that's trying to get Mystery Inc. Run out of town or thrown in jail or something, because it was one of her relatives or something along those lines that got caught by Mystery Inc. way back when, and she's trying to get revenge on him, I think, is the long and short of it.
Yeah.
Anything, if I'm remembering correctly. So.
And then they have like is in the afro, and that's pretty.
Honestly, I think I liked him better as the old grandma. Afro Scooby, I'm not so sure, but honestly, old Grandma Scooby, that was a lot better. And I will say this for both movies:
Cantina.
Go ahead.
With all the villains, they've captured.
That I did not.
Yeah.
That I didn't remember, honestly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I will say this or anything about the effects for Scooby, and honestly for all the reanimated villains and everything. I think for the time and the technology that they had, those were done very, very well. Just from
the budget, I guess.
Well, yeah, honestly, I don't remember exactly what the budget was for Scooby Doo, at least the first one. I think it was like maybe, I want to say ballpark $50 million. Give or take, and it made its money back and then some very easily and everything. I think the second one, I think it broke even or just over even and everything. So they kind of stopped with the second one. I think honestly the actors. Go ahead.
Yeah, I do think it kind of flopped, the second one, but then it created some recast and all that. So
because there was enough of an interest. They realized there was enough of an interest with how well the movies did, particularly the first one, that they did new iterations of the cartoons. Now they didn't rehash the same storylines from the old cartoons, but they came up with new storylines and they did new cartoons. And I think the shows are I think the one show that they've still got going is in fact still going.
Yeah.
I think it runs on Boomerang or Cartoon Network or somewhere, one of those channels.
Scooby Doo Mystery Inc. is the one that Matthew.
Is that the one?
Matthew.
Is that the
Matthew Lillard voiced Shaggy? So
yeah. So, but honestly, I think the fact that you had a relatively successful first movie and you had, granted, yeah, it was a flop, but I think it was still fairly well received. I think there was still enough goodwill with the general public and the people that were fans of Scooby Doo that they saw that there was still viability for this property, that it still had life in it. They just needed to update it and come up with storylines that would be of interest for people to watch. And honestly, I think the fact that they even updated the characters, their mannerisms, their personalities to be more in line with how people would act nowadays, I think was honestly a good idea as well. Because if they had the stock, same personalities from the old 70s cartoon, even the 80s cartoon, because they did a couple of cartoon series in the 80s in those movies, I don't think they would have been as well received as they were. I mean, you still had enough of the old personality in every character that it was still recognizable, but they updated them enough to the point where they were more relatable. And then you translate what they did in that live action back into an animated series, and it has been received very positively.
I know that last year they ended up woking it up and released a Daphne and Velma movie.
Now that I hadn't heard about.
Yeah, they completely woke with that. So.
Oh man, why?
Of course, they always got to ruin these things, right?
Well, and and here's the thing, and I've kind of touched on this on my channel and some of my videos that I've put out. I know a lot of what's going on with pop culture, particularly now, is going very much the way of woke culture. But here's the thing. You've still got all this source material going back pre-woke that people can find on secondhand or on secondhand retail. Particularly secondhand retail is one of those places where you can really find this stuff. You can find it on eBay, you can find it on Amazon, and you can have what you want to watch. And if you want to ignore the rest of it, just ignore it.
Like Star Wars, there's the expanded universe. There's plenty of
yeah, absolutely. And I've alluded to this as well and everything. I do not honestly approve of what, and I don't want to get on a big long thing here because I know we're trying to talk about Scooby Doo.
Yeah.
I have pretty much checked out as far as the Disney trilogy goes, which is what a lot of people are calling it now, the Disney trilogy, because it is so far divorced from George Lucas, the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. Those first 6 episodes that people are calling it Go ahead.
Which a lot of people, they'll say that they would have liked a Heir to the Empire adaptation. But I think there's a story after Crucible that they could have done.
Now, Crucible, is that New Jedi Order, or is that?
Yes, that's one of the last books in the expanded universe.
Yeah, that's it's after the Yuzang Vong. Isn't that after the Yuzang Vong War?
Yeah, and for the spoilers, it kind of ends with Luke going off into exile and kind of setting up for the idea that he'll explore the Wills.
Mm-hmm. And and here's the thing. I remember when they released the original Thrawn trilogy back in '91. I actually have first editions of all 3 books, and I read those so many times because I remember after Return of the Jedi ended, and you had what a lot of people refer to as the dark time, the dark period, when you had no new Star Wars media come out, and people were just absolutely thirsty for it because it left on a very high note with Jedi, and people are like, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen with these characters next? And then you had Timothy Zahn come out with these 3 books, and then that just was absolutely the kickoff for the EU. And I won't say that I am an authority on the EU. I have read a good portion of it. I read a good part of the Yuzhang Vong series, the war and everything with the Yuzhang Vong. And I read a good portion of the comics and everything, particularly the Dark Horse comics, because those there's actually a guy on YouTube who has done an animated short of the first issue of Dark Empire, Dark Horse, the first issue in the Dark Horse series, and it is absolutely beautiful what the guy has done and everything. He's captured the spirit of the artwork and the voice acting and everything. It doesn't sound exactly like the characters, but it's a good approximation of what the characters have done or what the characters sounded like
on that, right? So
say one more time.
It's not cringe-worthy voice acting.
No. Yeah, it's good. It's like I said, it's a good approximation. Now, you're cutting out a little bit, bud.
Oh yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay.
If you want to switch to just audio, that'll be fine. That would probably work. But
you mean on my end?
Yeah, just so the computer doesn't,
Okay. Okay. All right. There we go. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah. Okay. So
okay.
Yeah. Back to Scooby Doo. Have you seen the new Scoob trailer for that?
Honestly, I haven't. I didn't know there was one or anything. I haven't been.
It's almost like a stylized animated movie.
Oh, okay.
Other than the voice acting in that, and that goes back to the voice acting we were just talking about. Like, they don't really sound like the original characters. You can pull that up if you want. Just don't play the audio.
Okay. Just give me half a second here.
It's called Scoob Official Teaser Trailer.
Okay. Scoob. Oh, Scoob Trailer 2020?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And other than like Scooby Doo himself, they mostly don't sound like the characters.
Okay. Hold on, I'm about to pull this up. I don't know if this is good.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't.
Oh man, what the heck is this?
What? Oh yeah. Yeah, they kind of stylized it.
I mean, okay, I can't even make it through that.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the animation looks okay, but
the animation is probably what will save it. But the voice acting is terrible.
It doesn't sound like Shaggy. It sounds pretty close like Scooby, but I didn't even make it far enough into.
Yeah. They could have at least brought in Matthew Lillard to voice that. Like,
well, if he would have done it, that is. So
yeah.
You don't know
he said his schedule was, kind of
wacky.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just honestly, as a person who grew up in the 1980s watching the old reruns of the cartoons. There's one in particular that I remember very well and everything. And I don't know if they ever actually finished it or if they did. I never got to see the finale of it and everything. It was the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo, and they actually had one of my favorite old school actors and anything. He was known for doing a lot of horror movies back in the day, and that was Vincent Price. It was called the 13 Ghosts of Scooby Doo, and I remember that show, and I would watch it. And I think several years ago, Cartoon Network finally ran the entire series from beginning to end, and they did show the finale where they captured all 13 ghosts or 13 spirits or whatever it was. But you had Vincent Price as kind of he was kind of a sorcerer or something along those lines, and he contracted. It was just Scooby and Shaggy. The whole team wasn't in that show, but they had another group of characters and anything that worked with Shaggy and Scooby or anything to capture these different spirits. And honestly, I wouldn't have minded if they had done a animated TV movie or something along those lines that kind of was a I don't want to say a reboot, but was an updated version of that storyline, because I think that'd be a storyline that a lot of people would be interested in, especially now, because this isn't a bunch of guys in suits and everything. This deals with real authentic supernatural case that the Scooby and Shaggy are brought in to solve.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if that's one that you're familiar, that you might even be old enough to remember or not. So
I know I grew up with What's New Scooby Doo, and that kind of inspired the newer movies.
Yeah. It did, and they've done a lot of TV movies and direct-to-video movies for Scooby Doo since they rebooted the cartoons or the cartoon and everything. And honestly, I don't have a great interest to watch them because they're not really for me.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that you do have this bit of a resurgence of Scooby Doo is a good thing, because except for, go ahead.
It keeps it alive. It keeps
it keeps it in the public consciousness, and they don't try and beat it into the ground, but they'll periodically bring out these, like I said, direct-to-video movies, or they'll just have them on Cartoon Network or Boomerang or something like that periodically. And I think that honestly, it's a good escape for the general public and for people who still remember Scooby Doo, for your grandparents and everything that grew up watching the old cartoon and everything, and even for people in my generation.
And a few of the original cast have passed away too, as well.
Yeah.
Like Casey.
Yeah, Casey Kasem, because Casey Kasem did the original voice of Shaggy, and he was actually he did another voice acting piece and everything. And this was back in the 1980s too.
Yeah.
He was in the Transformers movie that they had done. I think it was in 1986 or 87, somewhere along in there, because they did Transformers the movie and then they did G.I. Joe the movie. And Casey Kasem actually played or did the voice of a side character by the name of Retgar or something along those lines. And I honestly don't know the names of the other actors who did the voices or anything for the rest of the cast from the original cartoon, but I imagine most of them have passed on, because at this point I would imagine they'd be very old.
Exactly.
So, but
yeah. But yeah, they made a Batman and Scooby Doo movie back in the day as well.
Yeah, because I do remember this was another thing that was very prevalent and everything. With one iteration of the Scooby Doo show, they would have guest stars, and one duo that they would have on periodically, and they actually got the actors to do the voices was the original the 1960s Batman and Robin. They would have Adam West and Burt Ward come in and do the voices for Batman and Robin. And you would have them. You would have the Harlem Globetrotters. You would have, I think, Don Knotts, who's from the Andy Griffith Show. He played Barney Fife. He was also in a few live-action Disney movies and everything back in the 60s. You had all sorts of different characters and everything, or real-life personalities from the time that they would have come on as guest stars and everything for that particular series of Scooby Doo. And those are ones that I remember very well, and they were honestly funny as all get out. I remember there was one that they did with Batman and Robin, and they actually had I think they had the Joker as the villain.
Yeah, the Joker and Penguin.
Yeah, and they actually, I think they had Cesar Romero and Burgess Meredith come in and do the voices for those because the
West thing.
Yeah, because Cesar Romero was the Joker on the Batman TV show, and Burgess Meredith did the Penguin for the TV show as well. And I think they were able. I think when they had that particular episode, they were able to get them all at the same time. So, but yeah, honestly, it's amazing. Aside from the Looney Tunes characters, Scooby Doo and maybe the Flintstones are one of those cartoon icons that have become truly timeless. And I think honestly that's really a beautiful thing, and it's really it says something to the property because it is so timeless. You periodically have to do an update on them, but you can still keep the core of the character. It's the essential part of the core of that character the same, but you just update how they talk, how they relate to the world around them, or the world in which they now exist, or anything. And it doesn't seem heavy-handed or ham-fisted. It's done relatively smoothly. So,
yeah. They've done many cartoon spin-offs like Scooby Doo Kids and all that, where they're more youngsters and
well,
like Muppets Babies.
Muppet Babies, yeah, I remember Muppet Babies. Yeah, it was like that one that I mentioned a little bit ago and everything. A pup named Scooby Doo. That was one actually where they were all, I think, in elementary school, and I would watch that. It was a Saturday morning cartoon is when it ran. It ran on Saturday mornings back when there was such a thing as Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I'm 41 years old now, and I can actually remember a time.
And I was born in '95, so I still remember the days
of Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah.
And honestly, the '90s was a great era for Saturday morning cartoons, honestly, because you had, I think you still had the Ninja Turtles were still on at the time. You had some of these I'm mentioning weren't necessarily Saturday morning cartoons, but they were cartoons they would run in the afternoon, or they would sometimes run them on Saturday mornings. You had the '90s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You had
I love
the Batman animated series. I did too. I used to anything when I was a kid. I would collect the figures and everything. I got the core team eventually, and another great one and everything. Like I said, was the Batman animated series that had Kevin Conroy, and you had oh heavens, I'm blanking. Give me a minute.
Yeah,
was another good one. Dang it. I'm slipping with my old age.
I know when it's Scooby Doo and the Cyber Chase, where they get trapped in the video game.
Oh yeah. I actually did. That was actually one of the very first 80s pop culture videos I did was on Tron. I don't know if you had a chance to see it or not.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one I didn't get a chance to see, honestly. But there was another one that took place in the 90s that you're probably familiar with. I know I am, and that was Reboot. And that was one of the very first times that they did pure CG animation for a show. And though it doesn't look as good now as it did then, the story it holds up. Right?
Yeah.
That's the amazing. The story holds up. The computer graphics don't, because you're talking like this was first generation PS1, N64.
I remember a show kind of like that on Canadian television. It was Ace Light. It was like a mixture of CGI and live action. You can pull that up if you want to check that out. But yeah, it was. It almost was like the old, cartoon mixing with the live action, like Scooby Doo.
Yeah, there was one I remember and everything that kind of fell in the same framework and everything. But it was an '80s. It was a live action show, but it was kind of like Power Rangers, but not, because you didn't have the whole team and everything. It wasn't a team concept. It was a single guy. It was called Captain Power and Soldiers of the Future.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was one that you ever got a chance to watch, or if it was one that was.
I remember watching some Power Rangers and never really getting into it. I always felt like it was cheaply made.
Honestly, here's the thing with the Power Rangers, the American version. You had they intercut the American actors with the Asian, because it was a Saban.
I think I grew up with the
property
American version, and that's why I.
Yeah, but honestly, I never cared for Power Rangers. Now, I grew up in the 1980s, and for me, one of the big things back then was Voltron.
Yeah.
And Netflix actually did a reboot of Voltron. I watched a few episodes of it. I didn't get a chance to watch all of it, but from what I saw, it held pretty well to the story. But they just updated the animation. They did a lot of CG work with it, but it looked good. And honestly, I always thought the Power Rangers was a copycat of Voltron, because I thought, honestly, Voltron was the story was a lot more compelling. It seemed a lot more epic and a lot bigger. And everything than the Power Rangers did. And if I remember correctly, I think Voltron, it wasn't so much an episodic TV show, but it was a very long running anime and everything from Japan that they had done, but they just cut it up into episodes, and they would have an intro and then a closing credits scene, because that was also something that was very prevalent in the 1980s and going to the 1990s. They would import these Japanese anime TV shows or movies, and they would cut them up and make them episodic, and they would have a 30-minute episode per week or whatever. And some of these Japanese animes, they ran forever and everything. And it was just, I remember I actually got, it wasn't the full-size version Voltron. It was a smaller scale one, but it was still all five of the Lion robots, and they combined to build the Voltron robot. And I got that for Christmas one year, and I actually absolutely just played that thing to death. And it actually had, I think the one that I had, the main lion, the black lion, actually had those friction wheels where you pull it back and you let it go and it shoots forward on the floor. So
yeah, you were talking about Japanese animation, and the Scooby Doo Zombie Island was one of the first direct-to-video animated movies made by Japanese studio Mook Animation. And
I heard of that one, but I never watched it.
Yeah, I know that. I think it's either it's Zombie Island that a lot of people, I would say at my age, have nostalgia towards. Yeah, because it's one of those classic Scooby-Doo adventures.
Yeah, because
I think what happened is they actually turned out to be zombies.
Yeah, well, and I think that's one cool thing that they have done with the Scooby-Doo property. They transitioned so, like I like I mentioned a little while ago, they transitioned away from it just being a guy in a suit, and they actually made them a legitimate supernatural threat.
Yeah,
it was like almost
the live action movies. They were supernatural and magic and all that.
Yeah, almost they kind of went along that same vein as with the first two Ghostbusters movies and the cartoon that they did afterwards, because you had this sense that what the Ghostbusters were facing was an actual supernatural threat, but the movies kind of played down the paranormal aspect of it. They made it more of a scientific deal, which I think was very well done. But with the cartoon that they released after I think it was actually after the first Ghostbusters movie that they did the cartoon, and then you had the second movie come out, and I think shortly thereafter the cartoon ended. And I think because I don't know if maybe ratings just dropped for it, or if the actors that were doing the voices just didn't want to do it anymore. But yeah, that was something that they did very well in the Ghostbusters movies and in the TV show. Is you got this feeling that there was this threat that they were facing was very real and very dangerous, but at the same time they didn't try and make it over dramatic or anything to the point where it broke the humor. Because when you're trying to balance a dramatic theme with a comedic theme, it doesn't always work. But what they did with the Ghostbusters movies and what they did with the cartoon is they made the threat feel real, but at the same time, you still had the humor to kind of cut the tension there. And I think what they had done with that first Scooby Doo movie and the second one, and then when they rebooted the cartoon, they got away from that whole idea that this is just a guy in a suit, where it kind of was, particularly with the first Scooby Doo movie. It wasn't necessarily a guy in a suit, it was a puppy in a suit, but the supernatural threat was still just as real. It was still as menacing as you would believe it was.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Are there any other Scooby Doo movies that you can think of that haven't been brought up? Yeah.
Honestly, no, I can't, because like I said, I didn't have an opportunity to watch a whole lot of the direct-to-video releases or anything that was on cable and everything, because I didn't have access to cable at the time and everything when they were doing all these reboots, or I was in college at the time and I just didn't have the time. I had my nose buried in books. So,
which is another thing. Scooby Doo had tons of books and a lot of So, have you read any of those?
Honestly, I wasn't even aware that they did have any of the books, to be honest with you. I didn't. Yeah. I knew they had done some comics and everything. They did, like back in the day, they did Scooby Doo comics, but I wasn't aware that they had done I guess were these young adult books or whatever, or were they like graphic novels?
Yeah. I know DC ended up making like a post-apocalyptic story for Scooby-Doo, and that was a weird concept.
Huh, that is an interesting concept, because you wouldn't think they would go that dark with Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
Because that, as I've mentioned before, this particular property doesn't lend itself to very heavy dramatic themes or anything within the show, or even within anything previously that they had done. Most of it was fairly lighthearted. It didn't take itself overly seriously, but the fact that they did a post-apocalyptic storyline, that's honestly intriguing to me. Do you remember the name of the book they did, or the series that they did?
They basically adopted a lot of the episodes of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, are you referring to the post-apocalyptic?
Yeah.
Yeah. Give me a sec. I got.
Okay, you're fine.
Yeah. I know DC did it, so I don't know if you want to help look that up.
Okay, give me a minute. Let me get on Google.
Oh, yeah, it actually is called Scooby Apocalypse.
Okay, well that's
not. And they got shaky with like a beard and a mustache and Fred. You can still look it up to see how ridiculous it looks, but Oh,
Scooby Apocalypse.
and they got Scooby as an actual dog in some of them. Like Fred has a gun. Jeez, they went full out on this. They made Velma into a gamer.
Well, that would fit with her character, honestly.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Scooby Apocalypse.
Oh, dear God. It was a monthly comic book series.
Oh, my gosh.
It began in 2016.
They turned
Dear
Daphne into some sort of huntress or something like that. I've got the picture in front of me right now. They've given Scooby a kind of a cybernetic eye or something like that. Okay, that's a new one. Even that's a new one, even on me.
Looks like Arrow.
Yeah, he kind of does. He really kind of does. He does a little bit like Oliver Queen.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah. They've definitely tried to make spin-offs like that.
Yeah. I will say this is honestly one of the most original ones that I've heard of. And everything, Scooby Apocalypse. I guess it's basically demons have in fact taken over the world, and now they're the only ones left to try and fight them off.
Yeah.
So, well, honestly, that would fit and everything with kind of Velma, or not Velma, but Daphne and everything, particularly if they've modeled her after Sarah Michelle Gellar's portrayal of her in the movies, because you've almost got a mashup of Buffy and Daphne now in a post-apocalyptic landscape, and she would be perfectly suited for that because she's got the skills to survive that in that sort of situation. So,
speaking of that apparently Buffy the Vampire Slayer had a Scooby gang, which is kind of ironic. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because they I watched the show from start to finish. I have it on DVD. I've got the fancy box set where the top opens up and the front folds down. It's got the quote from the episode, "Into every generation, a Slayer is born." She is the one,
and she
gifted with the skills and
Daphne on that show.
Mm-hmm. No, Sarah Michelle Gellar plays Buffy.
Yeah. I meant she has a Daphne trademark neck scarf.
Oh, does she?
Yeah.
Huh. Honestly, I never picked up on that, to be honest with you. I mean, it was a 90s show. Most of the girls and everything that were in high school and everything, they wore a lot of neck scarves. I remember this because, well, I went to high school in the 90s. So, but yeah.
The reason that's why they picked her.
Well, no, because here's the thing. Oh, you mean why they picked her to play Daphne?
Yeah.
More than likely, but everything, because I think she was looking for something to do that was a little more lighthearted and kind of break away from her whole role as Buffy, because she'd done that show for 7 years, because it ran from 95 or 96 all the way to 2001, give or take. And Scooby Doo came out in, I think, 2002 or 2003. So this is a couple years post Buffy, and she was wanting to do something different and everything. And I think her and Freddie Prinze were actually married at the time when they did those two movies. And honestly, I think it was best that she got away from him when she did and everything, because he's kind of fallen off. Well, obviously, we've kind of mentioned this. He's kind of fallen off the tracks.
Exactly.
And she's trying to put as much distance between him and her that she possibly can. I can't necessarily say I blame her. I do remember she had a cameo in the last episode of Big Bang Theory where she was Raj's date. And Actually, I didn't watch the episode. I caught the clip and everything on YouTube or whatever. And she looks at him and says, I'm here just as your date. And Raj just kind of grins at her and says, yeah, sure. But honestly, yeah.
Yeah. Scooby Doo had a lot of DC spin-offs too. They had a Swamp Thing adventure.
Mm-hmm. That wouldn't surprise me.
Back to what you're saying.
Hold on.
Oh yeah.
Try not to sneeze here.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole thing with Sarah Michelle Gellar, I think honestly her casting as Daphne was very well done, but they allowed her to evolve into a very natural way, because in the cartoon and everything, she was always seen as the one who had to get rescued. And I think the fact that they broke that character trait of her and made her into this very capable, very able to handle herself, and
it wasn't played off as woke at the time.
No, it was played off as a natural evolution of the character. She was tired of being the damsel in distress. She went to very rigorous, comprehensive martial art training, and you can see that she still retained a lot of those martial arts skills from when she did Buffy all those years, because she did do martial arts training. Now, granted, they did have a stunt double for her for some of the more dangerous fight scenes and everything, but more often than not and everything, she, as well as the show went on, she would do her own stunt work and anything, at least as far as they would allow her to, because there were some things that were just too dangerous for her and everything. But honestly, for the 90s, I think Buffy was one of the best shows that you had on TV at the time and everything. And even now, 20 some odd years removed and everything, it holds up remarkably well. And because it was competently written and competently directed, and you had a group of people working with Joss Whedon and everything to create this realistic world and everything in which Buffy took place, and you had an actress who had the acting ability to both play the dramatic aspect of it, but also could play the humor, because Buffy was, while it was a very supernaturally themed show, it did have some of those young teen drama beats to it, but it also had comedy to it, and it all meshed very well. Because I'll be perfectly candid, I know Joss Whedon catches some flack for some of the things he's done in the last few years, but honestly, he has been a very
Justice League.
And honestly, they brought him in last minute because of what happened with Zack Snyder and his family.
Yeah.
And
which is a shame.
Say it one more time.
Which is a shame. I mean, unfortunate what happened.
Yeah. And I haven't seen Justice League. It's not that I have any personal beef against it. I honestly don't. It just didn't necessarily appeal to me. Honestly, I'm more of a Marvel person. I read Marvel comics growing up. I did read some DC comics, but the DC characters, except for Batman, never really resonated with me. I didn't care.
I wasn't a big Superman guy either. So. Superman.
Honestly, and again, I went and saw Man of Steel when it came out in theaters, and honestly, I thought it was a good movie. I thought it was very well done. I thought a lot of the criticism didn't hold a lot of weight with me. But granted, that's just me. I thought Man of Steel was a good movie.
Yeah. Because every other version has kind of made him overpowered, and this one kind of made him.
It made him human. And I think honestly, because you have to realize you've got to give Superman some sort of flaw. Now, do I think Henry Cavill's portrayal was a bit stiff and a bit wooden? Yes, because I am somewhat familiar with the Superman comics. I did read a few storylines.
Christopher Reeves is loved.
Yeah, his portrayal is as good a portrayal of Superman as you're going to get, except for maybe for Tom Welling on Smallville. And I will say this for Smallville, I didn't get to catch the last 2 or 3 seasons of it, but I thoroughly enjoyed Smallville. I thought Tom Welling was a very good young Clark Kent, a very good young
And
Superman.
Brandon Roth did a pretty good job as well.
Yeah, I thought I went. Yeah, because Brandon Roth had a hard role to play there because he was trying to do his own thing, but still pay homage to what Christopher Reeves had done and all those.
I believe if I'm correct, it was a continuation of the Donner's cut.
If I remember correctly, yes, it was a continuation. I think after Superman 4, because after 4 they quit, but there was some sort of explanation where Superman had gone back to the vicinity of Krypton, thinking Krypton was still around, but he finds out Krypton's not there anymore. It's gone.
Yeah.
It's up, and it did in fact explode. There were no survivors except for his cousin Kara Zor-El, who plays Supergirl.
Yeah, I mean they did do a spin-off movie, I think, of Supergirl. Based in the
they did one back in the yes,
70s.
they did actually. I remember it was called it was actually the 80s.
Oh,
it was an 80s movie and everything. I remember going and seeing it at a drive-in near where I live. It was Supergirl. It had Helen Slater, and she played Supergirl. She played Kara Zor-El. You actually had Peter O'Toole and everything. He played a scientist on this colony that was adjacent to Krypton. It was called Argo City or something, or Argus City. And Faye Dunaway plays this villain and everything. She's this wannabe sorceress or witch or whatever you want to call it. And this artifact from the city, the colony that is a Kryptonian colony. This artifact gets somehow shuffled off to Earth, and Kara has to go to Earth and anything to collect it. And Helen Slater plays Kara Zor-El, and she does a fairly good job. The movie, some people didn't particularly care for it, and I can understand why. Me, I thought it was okay. It was a decent 80s movie. It was a decent Superman movie. It was a spin-off, as you mentioned. But it wasn't great, but it wasn't bad either. Everything. It was for the time that it was made in, it was passable.
That kind of ties into Scooby Doo as well, because they did have a lot of Superman spin-offs with Scooby Doo. They had tons of like DC connections because
Warner Brothers owns DC. That's their. You've got Disney has Marvel, Warner Brothers has DC.
Yeah, and they have Scooby Doo, and
So I think the fact that Warner Brothers has taken the initiative and has done some of these crossovers and everything, these mashups, it's not a bad thing if they play it right. And I think because you can do crossovers with some of these properties that are believable and can be entertaining, and then there are other times where they just don't fit. And here's the crazy thing with the DC animated movies that they've done and the animated TV shows that they've done. I think they are actually better in some respects than some of the Marvel live action shows that Disney has put out, that Marvel has put out. Now, I'm not saying Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is all bad. I've never watched it all the way through. I've heard it's kind of
because they're not putting as much money into the network shows.
Yeah, they're pouring all their money into the movies and everything, and now they're pouring money into all these Disney Plus shows that are going to be rolling out.
The quality is clearly shown. If you pour money into the TV shows, they'll do well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, if you look just now, granted, I have not watched Mandalorian, but from what I've heard and I've seen clips of Mandalorian, I honestly, like I said, I've commented on
like a George Lucas production.
Here's the thing: you've got his right hand man, his real right hand man. You've got Dave Filoni, and they're working with Jon Favreau, and
also a passionate Star Wars fan. Jon Favreau.
Yeah, they're both very passionate about the project. They know the property, especially Filoni. He knows the property. He knows the lore. And you've got Favreau on the other side, who has gone from decent actor turning into a very good director. Now, I know some people didn't care for Lion King, and I
Although
can
that
understand.
wasn't his script, so I kind of
No,
he
they
couldn't
handed
really-
because honestly, from what I've heard, the Lion King was pretty much a beat for beat live action or realistic CG redo of the original animated movie.
yeah.
And a lot of people just didn't go see it, and I was one of them. I had no particular interest in.
Does a better job with original screenplay.
Yes, I think he do the screenplay for Jungle Book, or was that another one that was out of his hands? Because I heard a lot of people liked Jungle Book because a lot of people thought, from what I heard. Now again, this is one I didn't get a chance to
He did
see.
direct that, yeah.
He did direct Jungle Book, but he didn't do the script.
I'm not sure. I that's something that, but yeah.
But yeah, the thing is, if you have people that are going to be passionate about the property, they're going to put forth the effort to make these shows good.
Yeah.
And even
And that's
getting kind of
everything, really.
yeah.
If you get people that are passionate about something, you're really gonna.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, but the and even kind of getting back to Scooby Doo a little bit here. You had somebody doing these movies, especially the first one. I don't know if the same director did both or not, or if they had different directors on either one. But at least on the first one, you had somebody who respected the franchise, even though it was a very dated franchise it was still in the public conscience, but it wasn't widespread. They crafted a story that was realistic to the world. They evolved the characters in a way that was very organic, that made sense. Everything, and it still had a good balance between the old staple of the character and this new aspect of themselves that they had brought into the movie. And I think when you have these movies and these TV shows that are based on older properties, you've got to know you obviously have to know your stuff, but you have to have the ability to write these characters and write a story that's going to be relatable to the audience. And I think what Favreau and Filoni have done with The Mandalorian is they've dipped back into the lore of, I think, the expanded universe, even though they'll never come out and actually say it because they may be restricted from saying it or whatever the case may be. But they've dipped back into the lore of Star Wars and pulled out stuff from the Mandalorian culture, particularly in the later seasons of the Clone Wars and Rebels. And they've modernized it. Well, no, okay, not modernized. That's not the right phrase. But they've tweaked it. They've focused it onto this one particular character, the Mandalorian, and you're starting to get a snapshot of the Mandalorian culture post fall of the Empire and post this great purge. Say one more time.
Yeah, the Disney version of the Mandalorians, because the expanded universe Mandalorians are extremely different.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing with the Mandalorians is you have to do a lot of digging to get a clear timeline for the race. And I think what they're trying to do with this TV show is give you a snapshot of the Mandalorian culture, but they're doing it a little bit at the time so that they're not overwhelming the audience to where they are missing the story that they're trying to tell. Because a lot of people have equated this show as a Western in space, kind of like with Firefly.
Yeah, like
and
Eastwood or yeah.
So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the rest of the season looks like. If the directing holds up, and I think honestly, they had with chapter 3, didn't they have their first female director on this episode?
And the third one was hands down the best episode. And not only that, but the director also said she didn't want to be viewed as the first female director. She just wanted to be a Star Wars director. And I respect that immensely.
As do I, because I think you're seeing a lot of Kennedy's influence starting to dilute or diminish. Actually, a better word be used would be diminish with the properties that are coming out now. And you're seeing these people that just want to come in and direct a good story, that want to direct a good episode of this show. And honestly, I'll be interested to see the reviews for when Bryce Dallas Howard's episode comes up, because most everybody knows who her dad is at this point, even though the last movie he did wasn't Ron Howard.
Well,
the last
movie, Solo, I did enjoy Solo a little bit.
I've heard most people have said Solo was pretty good, but I think the reason it did as poorly as they did as it did
reshoots. Yeah.
Well,
Kathleen Kennedy.
Yeah, I think if they left Phil Lord and what's the other guy that worked with him? Lord and Miller. And Miller. If they had left them alone, them alone, go ahead.
Yeah, although because they left the project, they did end up getting Spider-Verse, which, everyone loves Spider-Verse. So it kind of worked out in the end.
Yeah, honestly, I think if they had left Lord and Miller alone, because they had movie? I think the reports were 90% shot.
Yeah.
If they had just left them alone and let them finish it, I think we would have gotten a movie that everybody would have enjoyed.
Yeah, that or just let Ron Howard, from the start, right? Just have Ron Howard from the start, because he's always kind of been friends with.
Well, with George Lucas, with George Lucas, absolutely.
Colin wants to come.
Oh, hey, Colin.
Hi. Yeah, I didn't want to show my face, but how's it going, guys?
Doing all right. How are you?
I'm good.
We're just talking Mandalorian right now, so.
Yeah,
I haven't watched Mandalorian. Sorry.
That's okay. I haven't either, so don't feel bad.
We're talking Star Wars in general, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We just got kind of wrapped up on Scooby Doo. Now we're kind of. So, Colin, I've seen some of your posts online and everything. You've got some good ideas, young man. Keep them going.
Oh, thank you.
Honestly, this is actually my very first live stream. I've only been doing YouTube since the middle or tail end of October. This is actually my very first live stream ever. So,
I see.
I had my very first live stream a while ago, so I'm kind of getting better. And when I appeared on Ryan Kindle's Common Grounds, I kind of was a robot CJ. My internet.
Oh, Ryan RK Outpost.
Yeah,
is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, wasn't friendly.
It was very, very unfriendly.
Yeah.
Oh no.
So.
Yeah.
But kind of catch you up a little bit. We're talking about with The Mandalorian, the direction that it's gone thus far. Just our general thoughts on it and everything.
I see.
And the changes, like now that they're kind of respecting the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But Colin, we'll give the floor to you for a minute if you got something you want to talk about.
All right. Well, I don't really have much, to be honest.
Oh, that's okay.
All right. You can talk about what your thoughts on like Rise of Skywalker and all that.
I'm gonna be honest. I am boycotting that movie. I really don't want to see it.
I think most of us are.
Join the club. Join the club, bud. Join the club.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm the oldest one in the room at the moment, and
yeah, you probably are. I'm only 23.
Yeah, I've both got you by 20 some odd years.
I'm
well,
24. So.
How old are you?
I'm 24.
20. Yeah, I'm 41, so I've got about 20 years on both of you.
Yeah.
So you got a boomer in here, but not so much a boomer.
Okay, boomer.
Well, let me just toss something out here and everything. Something that I've been kind of discussing on my channel. I don't know if either one of you had a chance to see any of my videos thus far or not, but I've been doing this. So you've seen some of them. Have you seen the Babylon 5 reviews or discussions I've done thus far? Are either one?
I have, but yeah, I've heard about Babylon 5. That's a sci-fi show, right?
Yes, it is. It's actually from the 1990s.
Right.
I've watched your Goonies video as well.
Oh, did you? Okay. All right. Yeah. As I've mentioned in some of my videos, the 80s and the 90s are when I grew up. It was my childhood. It's what I know best and everything. And I'm not saying I don't know stuff from the 2000s. Obviously, I do. But I think one of the reasons I focus on these topics and everything is because eventually all the stuff around Star Wars is eventually going to die down, and people are going to be like, okay, what are people out there doing and everything? And I'm kind of trying to get my voice out there discussing these old properties and stuff that still resonates with people, because I don't know how many times thus far with my Babylon 5 videos, I've had people going back and saying, dang, I need to go back and get this show or watch the show because you talk about it just evokes all these thoughts. But to kind of give you both a rundown and everything for if you're not too familiar with it. It ran from, I think, like 1994, give or take, to like 97 or 98. It ran for 5 seasons in syndication. And it eventually got picked up by TNT and everything. It's one of the big cable networks. And they contracted for a 5th season, and they did a bunch of TV movies surrounding the history of the Babylon 5 universe. And okay, here's one that the both of you might be familiar with. Do you remember when they did a reboot of Battlestar Galactica? Or it might be just
I do, and I really enjoyed that. I love the take on. It's almost like a documentary, the way they filmed the airstream things with the floating camera and the zoom in.
Yeah, that, and honestly, now here's the thing with Babylon 5. It's kind of a it harkens back to the original Star Trek and even into Star Trek Next Generation. But here's the interesting thing. Right? A little bit, but not too much.
Yeah.
It kind of ran parallel on certain aspects with Deep Space Nine. If either one of you remember Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, I've been watching Deep Space Nine.
I've heard.
Okay.
So.
It's called Star Trek Deep Space Nine. It ran concurrent and after Next Generation was running, and after Next Generation went off the air. I think it went maybe 2 more seasons after Next Generation ended.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing with those 2 shows. The guy who wrote Babylon 5, J. Michael Straczynski, he actually went to, I want to say it was Paramount, because Paramount owns Star Trek. And he pitched them this idea for Babylon 5. They rejected it, but they ended up keeping, or he given them a treatment or an outline of the show. And there are certain plot beats within Deep Space Nine that run pretty parallel to what Babylon 5 did. But Babylon 5, it's a very epic. It has a very epic feel to it. It's a very big universe, a very big space that you're dealing with. Now, it categorizes more as science fiction future, kind of like with Star Trek and everything. It takes place in a future era. But the interesting thing that they do with the Babylon 5 is they mix in a lot of, I want to say, pseudo-mythical themes in it. particularly with some of the alien races that exist within the world. And I've talked about them and everything. If either one of you, CJ, if you watch my episode on who was Ambassador Kosh, I talk about who Ambassador Kosh is in the race that he belongs to. The Vorlons were who they were, and I think honestly, Babylon 5 in a lot of ways was ahead of its time because it dealt with a lot of real world issues that were even prevalent in the 1990s, because you've got this whole relationship and everything with two of the main characters, John Sheridan and Ambassador Delenn. And what ends up happening with Ambassador Delenn, she's an ambassador for another race called the Minbari. It's an alien race that exists in the B5 universe. And what she ends up doing and everything, and this is something that you'll notice with Straczynski and his writing, particularly in Babylon 5, if y'all ever get a chance to get your hands on the DVD series, and they do have it on Amazon. You can pick up the whole box set. It has all 5 seasons, plus all the TV movies, and then the spinoff of the first season, Crusade. Straczynski plants a lot of seeds early, and then they pay off down the road. And you see this very often throughout the entire series, particularly the first 4 seasons and in the 5th season as well. But what ends up happening is Ambassador Delenn goes through this metamorphosis where she becomes a hybrid of half human, half Minbari. And something that Straczynski addresses through that storyline, because eventually her and the Bruce Boxleitner's character, John Sheridan, they end up being in a relationship and they eventually get married. But what happens with that particular storyline is you have this discussion about interracial relationships, because up until the 1970s and even the 1980s, interracial relationships weren't that very common, and they were still kind of frowned upon and everything, even after segregation here in the U.S. had gone through and the civil rights movement had accomplished so much. You still had people who had the natural prejudice or had a prejudice towards interracial couples. And I think how Straczynski handles that topic within that relationship and in that storyline of Sheridan and Delenn's relationship is very well done. So, and I'm gonna do a couple other. I'm still working on this series. I'm gonna be doing a couple more. I'm gonna do at least one more video on one of the other characters. I'm working on the characters currently, trying to establish the universe, and then I'll go into the TV show proper, and then I'll branch off into some of the themes and so on that are discussed in the TV show and in the universe itself. So
yeah, and I've been doing my own the CGH reviews, movies past, present, and future. The last video I did was Jurassic Park. So
I'm actually old enough. I remember when I went to see Jurassic Park in theaters, and I will tell you that was in '93. And for us back in the day, that was absolutely jaw-dropping, groundbreaking stuff that they had on that screen there, because Spielberg worked very closely with ILM trying to get the representation of the dinosaurs as accurate as he possibly could. And Spielberg has always been a visual storyteller, and he always brings a sense of wonder and amazement to his stories and everything, particularly the ones that are very personal and close to him. And Jurassic Park was a story that was very close and personal to him. And I think the very interesting thing you have with Spielberg in those years is you have him go off and do this very lighthearted but very well crafted cautionary tale about man dabbling in cloning, and then you have him just a year or so later come out with Schindler's List and everything.
Yeah.
Everything. And that's a very dark, very heavy, obviously very dark, very heavy historical drama. But yeah, to say Spielberg hasn't earned his stripes in Hollywood is an understatement.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I know I've kind of gone off on a rabbit trail
Yeah,
here.
He's made a bunch of my favorite movies. Jurassic Park and Jaws. Jaws are two movies I absolutely love.
Yeah. And it's not so the sequels though.
Yeah, no,
no,
terrible. We don't talk about those.
We do not discuss the sequels of Jaws here.
Especially not the
They do not exist.
Yeah,
they never.
It ends at the.
We made it.
It ends at the. It ends at the first movie, and everybody lives happily ever after. The shark stays dead.
Yeah.
There's no offspring that try and come back and attack the Brody family.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
None of that nonsense. None.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm booted it by now and gone woke.
Don't. CJ, don't give them ideas.
Oh, yeah, don't give them ideas.
But here's the thing. I sincerely do not think they will ever try to do a reboot of Jaws.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because I don't think
they'll do that either.
Because here's the thing. Spielberg won't let them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Spielberg has enough weight and enough clout in Hollywood that if somebody says, let's do a reboot of Jaws, he's going to slap his hand and say, the hell you are.
Yeah. Until he's gone. And then...
Yeah. Well, I think even after he's dead, they will still be so afraid of his ghost that if they even think, let's do a Jaws reboot, his spirit's going to pop up in that boardroom and say, excuse me, what are you doing? And they're going to be like, never mind, Steven. Yeah. Never mind. Let's move on to other business. Nope, not doing it.
The next Fast and Furious movie.
Yeah, how many Fast and Furious movies have they done now? What has it been, like 9 or 10?
I checked out. Focus on the cars.
I checked out at Tokyo Drift. After that, I haven't seen any of the other Fast and Furious movies.
And then it became an action movie.
Oh yeah. I've only watched. Yeah, I've only watched like the later Fast and Furious movies, like Fast 5 through Fast 7. Those are the ones I watched. Or Furious 7, sorry.
You know, the amazing thing is, and I've kind of alluded to this in my 80s series, my 80s pop culture movies. The 1980s, you had such a diverse spectrum of movies that was released in those 9 years. Because you had everything from science fiction to fantasy to action adventure, comedy to straight action adventure with like Indiana Jones and everything else under the sun, because everybody was trying to figure out what was going to be the next big thing. Everybody was just throwing stuff at the wall to see if it sticks.
Mm-hmm.
And some stuff stuck, but didn't go anywhere and became a cult classic. And some stuff didn't. They did stick, but it just slid down the wall and disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, like with the, I made this point. I don't know if either one of you saw my, as I termed it, the obligatory Empire Strikes Back review. That sucker came out in 1980, and if you look at the pop culture landscape and the movie landscape of the 1980s, you can make a line back to Empire and say, this is where all these other studios were trying to come in and do their own thing or trying to recapture that lightning in the bottle. That was Empire Strikes Back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because you had Paramount come out with the three most popular Star Trek movies and everything that were in the 80s. We don't speak of number 5. We don't speak of Billy Shatner's contribution to the Star Trek film franchise. Say one more time.
What were they thinking?
Well, here's the thing. I actually got to meet William Shatner earlier this year. There's a group and anything that does traveling a road show, and they'll do special feature showings of old movies. And the one that they showed is actually Star Trek II Wrath of Khan.
Mhm.
And after the movie was over, they actually had him out on stage for a Q&A session. And if you wanted to pay an extra couple of bucks and everything, couple of bucks, quote unquote, you could actually get your picture taken with him. Me and my wife and everything, we were like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity because he's up, Shatner's up in his late 80s now. So you don't know if you don't know how much longer he's going to be around.
Mhm.
But I will say this for the guy. He has a very irreverent sense of humor. He does not take himself too seriously. I know some people have this impression of him, and it may be due, it may be undue, that he's kind of a pompous windbag. But but seeing him speak in real time, in real life, you don't get that impression of him. He's very relatable. He's relatively down to earth and everything. I mean, yeah, obviously he is a major film and TV star, and he has earned his due.
He'd rather be known by for the other properties that he's done versus
rather than Star Trek. And I can truly understand that. I can appreciate that fact because all these actors who have done these iconic roles throughout their careers, they want to be known for something other than that. And that was true of even Leonard Nimoy.
Mhm.
His claim to fame was Spock.
Mhm.
But he has done other things.
He eventually accepted that.
Yeah, he did. And everything. And I think that's true of all the surviving cast and everything from the original series. They've kind of accepted this is what they're going to be remembered for, and they've more or less made peace with it.
Mhm.
And everything. And here's the thing. The guy's in his 80s. He does not look it. I mean, obviously he has aged, but he doesn't look like somebody who is in his late 80s and anything. And I don't think that's so much to do with the fact, well, he's got the money, he can take care of himself or whatever. I think some people just genuinely age gracefully, and he's one of those few old school movie stars that has generally aged gracefully. They accepted the fact, hey, he's going to get old, he's going to get fat, he's going to get bald.
Mhm.
And he's just embraced it.
Mhm.
But kind of getting back on track with what I was talking about before. The 1980s, for those that didn't live through it and go through it, it was very much an escapist's dream when it came to all the properties and all the movies and TV shows that were produced in that era. And what you have nowadays, honestly, they're still trying to recapture that same magic, and in some instances they hit it, and other times they miss it by a mile.
Mhm.
So anyway, your thoughts on that, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah. The 80s were quite a time, if you ask me. Hey, there were a lot of really good movies then.
Yeah.
I mean,
And the 90s became about toys, I guess.
oh yeah.
Well, even the 80s were about toys.
Yeah. I always remember that was the era of He-Man, right?
Yes. He-Man, G.I. Joe, the smaller G.I. Joe, Thundercats, obviously Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
Transformers.
Oh,
Transformers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't know if there was actually a documentary miniseries that Netflix did called The Toys That Made It. They cover several of those big properties or anything. Yeah. I don't know if either one of you got a chance to watch it or not, or if it's even still running on Netflix.
What are your thoughts on that Bumblebee movie? I thought that was a better take on Transformers than the Michael Bay stuff.
Go ahead, Colin.
Yeah, I was gonna see that movie, but Aquaman came out around the same time, and I'm a really big DC fan, and I love DC, so I went and saw that movie instead. I don't regret it though. I actually really liked Aquaman. I mean, it was a bit too long, and the humor was a bit much, but otherwise, I loved it.
Yeah.
Honestly, I didn't get a chance to see either one of them.
Yeah, I didn't watch Aquaman only because I'm still waiting for the Snyder cut. So
We're all waiting for the Snyder cut.
For Justice League.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I've heard is coming soon, very soon. So
yeah, the question is, how soon is soon?
Yeah.
If either one of you get that reference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When will we get to now?
Yeah.
Soon.
Yeah. It sucks because Justice League should have been $1 billion property. Like,
yeah, I really should have.
It had the potential to be $1 billion
it's
property.
Justice League. It's got all.
Yeah.
Everyone knows Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman,
Aquaman, and the Flash. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
all my favorite superheroes.
I'm not a DC guy. I'm Marvel.
I understand.
But even I know who the Justice League is, and
exactly.
Yeah.
I remember the old cheesy cartoon with the voiceover.
Super Friends.
Super Friends.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, the 90s cartoon that they did with Justice League, I think that was one of the best representations of the classic team that we have outside of the movie.
Along with Batman, the animated series.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the cartoons of the 80s, and I'm actually going to probably do a series on this as well or anything, because cartoons were just as big of a thing as the movies were in the 1980s, because you guys, Colin, I don't know if it was you that said, or CJ, if it was you, the 90s were very much about toys.
Yeah.
The 1980s were more so about the toys, and the cartoons, they were basically just a glorified advertisement. Go out, buy this new toy. It's coming out soon.
Yeah. It's kind of like how the fast food restaurants have ruined the Tim Burton movies. And then we got the Joe Schumacher versions. Because
of
the
Batman movies?
Yeah, because of the fast food joints not liking Tim Burton's take.
Well, now here's the thing. I didn't get to see Batman 89 in theaters. I saw it on TV, and they actually had it running just as Batman Forever was being released in theaters. And up until that point, I had not seen Batman 89. I was like, whoa, this is good. And then I went and saw Batman Returns. I'm like, I don't care for this. But here's the reason why. It's not that I didn't like Keaton's portrayal of Batman. I always liked Keaton. The thing I keyed on for the Batman movies, especially the 80s and 90s ones, was the villains. If you give me a villain that I like, or they do a good portrayal of the villain, I'm bought in. I could not.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I actually have to go.
Oh, it's okay.
That's all right.
It's all right, Colin.
Yeah. All right. See you guys.
See you.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a. But yeah, you were saying like the animated series and all that were.
Well, no, it was the movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. With the movies, if it was the villain was one that I really liked and wanted to see on the big screen, and they were portrayed accurately, or at least fairly accurately, I was hooked in.
Yeah.
With Catwoman and Max Schreck and the Penguin.
Yeah.
I didn't particularly care for him. Now, I went and saw the anniversary re-release just a few months ago, and I liked it. It was okay. But the reason I liked Batman Forever is because you had two villains in the movie that I really liked, and I liked the actors who portrayed them, because you had Tommy Lee Jones.
And they survived, where at least the Riddler did. And for the Tim Burton ones, Joker and Penguin both died.
Yeah, and Catwoman survived. But the thing was, they switched her almost over to an anti-hero in that movie.
Yeah.
And everything. She was fighting Shrek and the Penguin, but she was fighting them not for justifiable reasons, but more for her own reasons.
And Tim Burton's version kind of inspired the rest of, the rest of
the card. Well, I would say the 90s cartoon was inspired in part by Burton's take on Batman, because even though it was a cartoon, it was in itself very dramatic. It had very dramatic beats to it.
It even had the theme song. So
yeah, and honestly, I think that they set it in a 1930s or 40s Gotham that had that very Art Deco, very noir feel to the world.
Yeah,
very gothic, very noir, like detective noir type of feel, with the way they drew the characters and the way how they set Gotham up. It felt right for the world and for the character.
Yeah.
And I'll even say the later seasons where they it almost seemed like they changed the art style somewhat and everything, but it still retained enough of that gothic film noir feel to it that it still held up. Now, the one thing that I will say that they did well with the cartoons, and they did a couple of spin-off movies. They did Mask of the Phantasm, which went into the back.
Some of the phenomenal.
Yes, absolutely. But the other one that I really liked, everything that was also based around one of my favorite Batman villains, is Mr. Freeze, and they did Batman Sub-Zero, and that was the one thing that broke my heart with Batman and Robin, because you had your first live action portrayal of Mr. Freeze on screen.
And then they changed it up.
They completely botched it.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying Arnold Schwarzenegger was necessarily miscast.
Yeah. But
I think
for what they're trying to do,
Schumacher was almost regressing the series. He was going back to the old 1960s Adam West, Burt Ward, Batman. Exactly. And Mr. Freeze is such a heavy and everything. Now, you don't get that so much in the 60s TV show, but you get it in the comics.
Yeah.
And you very much get it in the 90s TV show.
Yeah.
Victor Freeze.
I would love a Joker spinoff for Mr. Freeze, I think.
If the guy who did what's his name? He directed Joker.
Todd Phillips.
If he can pull off a Mr. Freeze movie the way he did the Joker, I'll be first in line, because honestly, behind Joker, Mr. Freeze is my favorite Batman villain. And here's the reason why. He's not a pure, straight up villain.
Yes.
He's got complexity to him. He's got weight and gravitas to him.
He's grieving over his loved one.
He's grieving over his wife.
Yeah.
Who is frozen in this cryogenic tank because she has this disease that science hasn't been able to figure out how to cure yet. But here's the amazing thing that they did with the 90s TV show going into Batman Beyond. You actually get a continuation and a conclusion to Freeze's storyline.
Yeah.
Because his body has degraded, and he's essentially just a head being preserved, because he says it himself, I have achieved what only other men have dreamed of. I am, in fact, immortal.
Yeah.
But they are able to clone his body, but unfortunately, the condition that his body acted when he was exposed to all those Sub-Zero chemicals are still in his genes. It damages his genes at the genetic level, and he ends up going right back into the Sub-Zero suit.
Yeah.
In Batman Beyond. but
even
they
Batman kind of respects him, I think.
Yeah, he does have respect for him, but at the same time, he also empathizes with him because he's just trying to live out the remainder of his life. And he, as he said, he is like, I am an immortal. I will never die.
Exactly.
And he's doubly so now and everything at the end of the other than Batman Beyond, because he goes off into, I think, the frozen wilderness or whatever, off somewhere in the world and everything, and he's just by himself again. I think his wife stays behind in Gotham, in future Gotham. Neo Gotham is what they call it.
Yeah.
And everything. But he goes off because he realizes that he can't have a normal life with her. And because he's such damaged goods and everything, because of everything that he's been through his life.
Yeah.
And he knows that eventually everyone that around him will die again.
Yeah.
And he can't deal with that. But if Todd Phillips can do a decent Mr. Freeze movie, I will be the first one in line to see it. Now, I wanted to go see Joker. I'm just, at this point, I'm just going to wait for it to come out on Blu-ray and get it that way, and I'll watch it then.
I watched it in the theater, and it was phenomenal watching
That's honestly what I've heard from everybody. I've heard umpteen dozen reviews just raving about it. And I will say this, Joaquin Phoenix, he has had a very good sustained acting career. He has done consistently good movies. I loved him in Gladiator, even though some people didn't care for Russell Crowe's part in that.
Yeah.
I thought him as the Emperor Commodus, he was pitch perfect in that movie. I loved him in Walk the Line.
He was almost in that Edward Norton movie as well, American
History X.
Yeah, he was almost in that, and then he turned that down.
Interesting. And he kind of became a recluse for a while and everything. He didn't go out and do much. He just kind of kept to himself.
He really hates interviews, honestly. I've seen a lot of his interviews, and he kind of bails out of them.
And I can understand that. Some people, they don't interview well. I think some people have a social anxiety disorder, and I think he might be one of those people that has that.
Especially after his brother passed away.
Yeah, River Phoenix.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think he realizes how toxic Hollywood can be, and though he works in the industry, he tries to stay as far away from it as he can, and he only comes out when he absolutely has to. And honestly, I can understand that.
Yeah.
Because
I understand if he doesn't come back for a sequel, because I don't want Hollywood milking them. But
I'm on the fence about them doing a sequel now. If the director and Phoenix are both on board for doing it, and they have a good idea of how they want to continue the story,
kind of like Nolan.
With Christopher Nolan, because Christopher Nolan, with his trilogy, it ended where it should have.
Yeah.
Now
didn't want to do a sequel for that.
Oh, he wanted to do,
unless there was a good story, and where he ended.
Well, I would have been okay if they had done a fourth movie with Nolan, if they had picked up with Robin,
like Nightwing and wherever. Yeah.
Well, they could have done Nightwing, or they could have done where he picks up the mantle of Batman. Yeah. And if they had progressed in time to maybe doing even, I know they kind of did this storyline in Dark Knight Rises, but if they did Dark Knight, the Frank Miller comic, if they did that and they did it right, and they were able to get Dark Knight Returns. If they were able to do that with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, let him age some, or even if they wanted to do, if they had done with Ben Affleck.
I mean, they attempted with the Batman v Superman, but they kind of ruined it with Doomsday. So,
yeah, I did not. Honestly, when I saw the first trailer for Batman versus Superman, I was like, no. I am not interested
overall,
in this.
I enjoyed it until the Doomsday plot, and I kind of dropped out at that point.
Here's the thing. You could do Doomsday, theoretically, but you have to have a lot of build up to it. Because in the comics, the Doomsday storyline doesn't come down until the 90s, like the early to mid 90s and everything. And they do it as this big event where Batman's going to die. They build this up. And you have umpteen dozen decades of history of Superman comic books. And then you finally have him come up against this force of nature that he can beat, but it costs him his life to do it.
They could have kept Doomsday for the Justice League movie.
They could have waited like 2 or 3 movies in.
Yeah.
After they had built up the Justice League. If they had done Justice League the same way that they did the Avengers.
Yeah. Just a solo movie each time, right? Martian Manhunter,
all of them. Yeah. And then once you've built up the team, you can have a first team up where they go up against Steppenwolf, or even maybe Darkseid. Even although I think they would be jumping things quite a bit if they did Darkseid and then did Doomsday.
Should be their end game, basically.
Yeah, but if you had, say, this is just my own theory. If this is how I would have structured it. They could have done Steppenwolf and done it properly, done a decent story
like
with
what they did in in
the Justice League that we have. Do Steppenwolf, then you have maybe one more solo movie, maybe Martian Manhunter come in.
Yeah.
And that's your bridge into the more cosmic aspect of the DC universe, and then you bring in Doomsday.
Darkseid, yeah.
No, you bring in Doomsday, but here's what you do. You do a couple more movies after Doomsday, and you have Superman out of the picture.
Yeah, and then you have Batman dealing with that.
And then
Aftermath.
you bring Darkseid in, but you don't have Superman right there at the start. They have to resurrect Superman
in part 2. Yeah,
everything in that part, and he comes in as like the cavalry to face off against Darkseid. Because let's be perfectly candid here, of all the DC characters, he's about the only one who can go toe to toe, strength for strength, punch for punch with Darkseid, and can do any type of real damage.
Yeah, they don't even need the rest of the Justice League. They just need Superman.
But if they wanted to do it like with the MCU with the Avengers, you need the rest of the team. And the rest of the team, they actually do an animated story. They do a Justice League War animated movie with Darkseid, but it's a different version of Darkseid. Everything. It's a one shot. It's actually the first outing for the Justice League. Everything, but they've done several lead up individual stories or whatever for the different characters of the Justice League, and then you have this animated movie called Justice League War, and they're facing off against Darkseid. He invades Earth and everything with all the parademons and whatnot. He kidnaps, I think, like a better portion of the population of the world. You can look up clips of it on YouTube and everything. Just punch in Justice League War, and you'll get at least the better part of the final battle between the Justice League and Darkseid. And this is like the first time they've actually teamed up formally to face off against a major threat. Yeah. And it's honestly extremely well done. They don't have Kevin Conroy, they don't have Tim Daly as Batman or Superman, but the voice cast that they do have is actually very good. I don't know any of the names of the actors. I haven't had a chance. I didn't ever gotten around to look them up, but they sound like how you would expect these characters to sound, because it's the main core team of the Justice League. It's Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash, and they actually bring in Shazam.
Yeah.
And everything, and Cyborg. Forgot about Cyborg.
Yeah.
But
I'm
the
not
voice,
the biggest fan of Shazam, honestly. I did enjoy the movie, but
That's-
I'm not the biggest fan of the character because I have always saw him as like a ripoff of Superman.
and honestly, he kind of is. Here's the interesting thing with that: his original title way back when was Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
Captain Marvel.
And
But
ironically, it came out when Captain Marvel came out. So
yeah, the Marvel version of Captain Marvel came out at the same time, and DC and Marvel comics and everything, they kind of got their heads together. They're like, okay, how can we mesh this out to where everybody's happy? And they're like, okay, we'll just rename the guy Shazam, but we'll make it an acronym for these different old mythological heroes that his powers are based around.
Yeah,
I haven't seen the movie. I've heard it was actually pretty good. As I've mentioned before, I'm not a huge DC person. I like some of the DC characters.
The Marvel movie.
It
feels more in line with the Marvel movie, like the yeah.
Oh, Shazam does.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen some clips on YouTube of the movie and everything. It's got that kind of Marvel-esque humor to it. And I think honestly it plays pretty well with the character and the tone that they tried to set within the movie. It's kind of a mesh between DC theme. It's DC themed, but it's also Marvel-esque. So
yeah. I do think, like, talking back about the Snyder Cut, I do think Snyder should get his vision completed, and that way they can move on with, doing standalone characters.
And honestly, if they wanted to release the Snyder Cut, go ahead and do it. Let the man have his vision. Let him have something positive from that very negative time in his life, because his life had hit the skids in a big way. Not him personally, but his family was going through a very traumatic time.
Yeah.
And I think
lose a family member like that.
No, that's about the worst way you can lose a family member, honestly. And it's gut wrenching, because here he is, he's trying to finish this movie, and then poof, I think it's his daughter.
Yeah, his daughter.
Okay, his daughter did she commit suicide or something?
Yeah,
was that what happened?
Did. Yeah.
Okay. There's an old phrase, you probably are aware of it: no parent should have to bury their child.
Yeah, exactly.
And I can't imagine what that felt like for the man, and I can understand him having to walk away from the movie and then bringing in Joss Whedon to finish it.
Yeah,
I don't hold any ill will towards Zack Snyder from him having to put his family first. You need to. I think at least what they should have done, if it had been at all feasible, was put production on.
Yeah,
delayed the movie, put production on hold, done something instead of pushing it forward, and let him come back when he felt ready. I don't care if it was 1 or 2 years down the road. I think everybody in the general public would be extremely understanding and extremely sympathetic to them delaying the movie so this man could go bury his daughter and grieve. And then he could come back when he gets his mind right and finish this movie.
Yeah, because it almost feels like what we got was a disrespect.
It was I think Warner Brothers was trying to push this thing out as quick as they could because they felt like they were falling behind.
Yeah,
with
the second Justice League movie that they've planned out.
Yeah, pretty much.
With what's his name, who did Hellboy, I think. Did Toro or wherever.
Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
Guillermo del Toro has done some really good movies, but at the same time, he's been I don't want to say he's been deliberately sketchy on how he's behaved with certain studios.
Yeah.
Because there's that whole controversy behind him being brought in by Peter Jackson to do the Hobbit movies.
Yeah. And then he came in to do a pilot for a Hulk TV show, and then he bailed on that. So
now I will say this for Guillermo del Toro. I have not seen a lot of his work. I've seen the 2 Hellboy movies. Love them to death. I think those are hysterical. I wish they had done a third with that cast.
Yeah. Technically, they ripped off his own thing with that.
With the reboot, yeah.
Not just that, but like, what's the one with Abe? The Abe ripoff movie.
But
the guy in the water.
Oh, yeah, Shape of Water.
Yeah, Shape of Water. It was definitely a ripoff of Hellboy.
Of Abe Sapien from
Yeah.
Hellboy. Yeah, that
It
I
had
never
the same plot.
I never even went and saw that because honestly, it just didn't interest me. Now, I've heard great things about Pan's Labyrinth. I've never seen it. It's probably
Yeah.
one I'll eventually go. I'll probably pick up on DVD or Blu-ray secondhand somewhere.
Yeah.
But Guillermo del Toro, he has a very unique vision for his movies, and I would have been interested to see what he would have done with The Hobbit. To be honest with you. There's actually another YouTuber and everything. I don't know if you've heard of her. She does a lot of video essays, and they're actually very good and everything. Her name's Lindsay Ellis.
Yeah.
And she actually did a 3-parter on the Hobbit movies and the production behind it. And she knows her stuff, and she did an incredibly good job. It's videos like 20 or 30 minutes long, but she really digs into what went on with the Hobbit movies and what happened with Del Toro and everything else along those lines. And I would have been honestly, it would have been amazing to see what his vision for Middle Earth with the Hobbit would have been. So
yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if you want to wrap this up, and we're 2 hours in, and so
yeah, we can. Absolutely.
Good chat.
Likewise.
Plug your channel in the chat. That would be.
You can find me under my moniker, Ambassador Kosh. I do a lot of. Thus far, I've been doing a lot of Babylon 5 discussion videos, character discussions. I'm doing 80s pop culture, 90s pop culture, and that encompasses movies, television, cartoons, comics, even a little bit of toy lines and so on. I do at least 2 or 3 videos. I'll do at least 2 videos a day. And another aspect of my my channel and everything that I'm trying to figure out how I want to approach it and everything. I am a Christian, and I do identify. I hate to use this terminology, but
as a wayman.
I identify as a Christian geek.
Yeah,
and all that entails. And I don't do a whole lot of negative reviews on mine. I think the most negative one I've done thus far is my what one person commented as my rant against Ryan Johnson and his comments towards Empire Strikes Back.
Which is well deserved. I mean, he goes after fans a lot. So,
and he went after Empire, and you do not go after Empire.
Exactly.
Period.
The best one.
Arguably one of the best, if not the best, of the whole six episode saga.
Yeah.
But that's my plug for my channel. You can follow me on Twitter at Rogue5778. And I am a part of Overlord DVD's community on Facebook, Geeks and Gamers. I'm not a formal member. I'm just a member of that particular Facebook page. Same thing with Geeks and Gamers. You can find me on there, and you can find me on WCBS.
Okay. So thanks for coming on again, and maybe we'll see you again another time. So
I look forward to it. You have a good night, CJ.
Yeah. See ya.
Bye.
So that was a good little chat. So as always, we'll see you in the next one.